Dear clients, cooperation partners, friends and colleagues, my name is Sorainen. I feel proud of having such a large group attending this webinar today. In September 25 years ago, our very first client, AGA Gas Company, lent me a computer and a printer in order for me to be able to start to work and advise them. Considering that it was a bit complicated for me to get the first computer, it's quite amazing that today we have well over 1,000 computers from all around the world connected to this webinar. So our firm's beginning may have been quite modest, but I nevertheless had an ambition to build an international law firm, which would have offices in all 3 Baltic states and maybe one day could have even 20 people working in the firm. That was the wildest dream I was able to have at the time. If someone would have then told me that on our 25th anniversary, there will be 30 partners, over 300 people in total in the firm. We serve every year over 3,000 clients, and over 1,000 people will join our anniversary webinar. Then probably I would not have believed it. Well, back then I would not have understood what a webinar is. It's an understatement to say that the development during the past 25 years has been huge, and largely so because of technology. Technology is constantly increasing the speed of business, and that is also adding psychological pressure on us all. It's not always easy to ensure that clients' business matters are very well taken care of, and at the same time, ensure that every person in our organization is also well taken care of, and at the same time, the firm is profitable, sustainable, and responsible organization, applying high business ethics in all what we do. For us, the balancing act has started from creating a mutual understanding of what is the core purpose of the firm, and why do we come to work every day? It can't be only for the money. That would not be sustainable. In our firm, we have defined that our core purpose is to increase prosperity in the Baltic states and Belarus by helping clients succeed in business. That statement contains many messages which are important for us. Our core purpose has helped to align our people, understand our role in the society at large, integrate our operations in the 3 Baltic countries and Belarus, and last but not least, it helps us to find the right clients to work for. The core purpose is tested especially during crisis, and most recently last spring, when COVID-19 started and we quickly launched various programs in line with it. It's currently being also tested in Belarus, where we need to think how to implement our core purpose in a way which helps to improve the society in the long term. We have been lucky to receive several legal industry awards during the past 12 years. For us, however, the greatest award of all is that after 25 years, we not only exist as a firm, which is quite an achievement in its own right, but we have great clients, very interesting work, and fantastic people in the firm, and we can implement our core purpose every day. It's a great honor for me that you have joined us today. Now I would like to hand the stage to our managing partner, Laimonas Skibarka.
Thank you, Aku. Thanks to our multi-talented senior partner, Sorainen, who has even composed and performed the trumpet intro, which you heard in the beginning. And you can see the trumpet picture behind him on the wall. Now let me share some more of the inside information how we were preparing this event. During the very first working group meeting, the proposal was to invite some impressive speakers who would talk about sustainability, innovations, and other attractive topics. But then Aku suggested that we should rather talk about our strategy. I can share that my first reaction was this: come on, Aku, why would our clients and cooperation partners be interested in our strategy? But Aku was insisting. Then I showed an even stronger argument. I said, look, we want to be more client-centered, not self-centered. So we should not talk about our own strategy during this event. However, after some debate, the working group concluded that if we talk about our strategy, it should be relevant to more people because the key elements of the strategy are really relevant to many companies. And if we invite strong speakers who would make interesting presentations on these topics, people should gladly participate. And our guess was right. Today we have over 1,000 people joining this event. And we are very thankful for you, for showing interest in our event, and for spending your precious time with us. As you already saw, these two online events will be focusing on 4 topics, which are also the cornerstones of our strategy. And these 4 topics are, first, people. Our strategic goal is to empower our people. Second, clients. The key element of our core purpose, which Aku already mentioned, is to help our clients succeed. Collaboration. We want to have a strong collaboration culture working inside with our people and also working with our clients and cooperation partners. And last but not least, knowledge and innovations. We want to be the market leader in this area as well. Today, we will be talking about people and collaboration. And after 2 weeks, we will focus on clients and innovations. I would like to conclude by thanking all of you for trusting Sorainen during the first 25 years. And we hope to continue growing our relationship during the next 25 years. I'm sure that with such a great team of clients, cooperation partners, and colleagues, the future is bright. Now, let me pass the stage and the screen to our dear moderators, Maria and Valts.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our webinar. It is especially designed for our firm's 25th anniversary. Let me first introduce you to this event's moderator, Pihlak. Maria is our senior associate in Estonian office, and you can usually find her behind her desk working on court cases. But if not, then she has likely run out for midday yoga or doing her 10,000 daily steps outside.
Well, good afternoon from myself as well, and Valts, thank you for this mindful introduction. For those of you who don't know Valts yet, let me return the favor by introducing him to you. Valts is a partner in our Latvian office, and normally you would find him strategizing a complex dispute or unwinding to the sounds of who else than Rammstein. Hey, Valts, did you know that we both started working in the firm on the same date, 3rd January 2011? Do you think we really have been courting the same firm for nearly 10 years?
Well, indeed, we have about 140 days or something to go before throwing a party. And therefore, it's a good thing that today we have a cause to celebrate 25 years of Sorainen. But actually, considering our background, Maria, I'm wondering why the firm has chosen dispute people to moderate this event. Should we expect intense questions from the participants?
Well, it's certainly not going to be monotone slide reading, I'll tell you that. We do have audience from all over the world watching. But you are right that we will have an intense next 2 hours with 4 wonderful speakers. But first, some ground rules. To everyone who has tuned in, you will have a possibility to ask questions. On the right-hand side of your screen, you should see a Q&A button next to each speaker's name. If you have a question, to press this button to ask your question. You can also see the other questions that have been asked, and you can upvote the question you like the best by liking it. Speakers will take questions from the audience normally after the presentations, but some also during them. It depends on the pace and topic.
You are also welcome to use the networking tab at the bottom of the right side of your screen. This allows you to connect with other participants of the webinar. To use the tab, create your profile by inserting your name, job title, company, and a picture if you like. You may also add your interests and skills in the next step. Then WorkSup will automatically match guests with similar interests to help you set up meetings and chats. And your setup profile will remain active also after this webinar. So please try to use it. And now, while you're setting up your preferences, I will give the floor to the first speaker. Let me introduce you to a former high-level fighter, a martial arts champion, turned sales and marketing executive, a man of focus, commitment, and will, who also happens to be CEO of Nordic Business Forum, Mr. Aslak de Silva.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here, and congratulations for the great company Sorainen for 25 years. So today I'm going to talk to you about something that I've learned during my life about self-development. As already mentioned, so from starting from martial arts, when I was 12 years old, I won the world champion in a particular martial art year 2000 in a competition in the US. Then I went on studying at school and received the best thesis award at Graduate Business School at Gothenburg University. And now I'm the CEO of Nordic Business Forum, which is one of the biggest online and offline conferences in the world for leadership. So we get people from more than 50 countries. So I will share what I've learned and kind of how self-development brought me to this point where I am now today. And let's see what the future will bring to me and to you. So starting with martial arts, one of course, if you know martial arts favorites is Bruce Lee. So learning is a constant process and of discovery. It never ends. So kind of that means that whenever you are in the mode of learning, so you don't need to stop. You can all the time get input and develop yourself at time. There's also no starting for anything there. So kind of like that you can pick up anytime. So you don't need to go to a course or anything, but you can just be in constant learning mode. So martial arts, of course, it's a skill that you know that you kind of start from with your white belt around your waist. When I started when I was 12 years old, so I was training 2 times a week, but I was already fancying seeing the people who were in the advanced level, maybe have a blue belt or even black belt. So I saw that they were training more than I was. They were looking at when they were moving, so they were moving better than I was. So I was there must be something. Of course, it was pretty clear that if I train 2 times a week, so I will never get to that level where if they are training 5 or 7 times a week. So I kind of realized that in order for me to develop to that level, I need to start training more and more myself. So of course I attended the trainings, but I was training myself there too, kind of fixing those things. So if I wasn't flexible enough, I was stretching. If I wasn't strong enough, I was using push-ups or training my power strength for that, practicing different techniques. So the first thing that I learned actually that takes me to the next level is the quantity. You need to have enough repetition. You have to have enough quantity that you can actually control your body and do whatever you want. Of course, if you look at my dream when I was 12 years old was actually to get a black belt. So I knew that the test of black belt would be very comprehensive. I need to know how to punch, to kick, be in good shape and everything. So kind of it was easy for me to see that I need to learn these things. So that was to set the direction for me that what I need to learn. Some things might not be applicable today because, of course, in different layers and different levels, you have different techniques. But I knew that in the end, I would need to train all very comprehensively. So that was also my focus on doing different things and learning from different parts so that I could develop in all the areas. But of course, when you have the quantity, you have the direction, you need the quality. With the good quality training, so kind of you learn, when you focus, you learn better. So kind of it's not only about how much, but also with the quality that you go for. And in order for you to ensure the quality, so of course in martial arts, you have a master, a coach, an instructor who's teaching you to go for that. They're observing you and telling you what you can do better, what you need to improve and so on. They show you the mistakes. But the other part that actually got me to become a world champion was also the team that I was training with. I had good friends, 2 others who actually won also a gold medal at the same competition in Michigan, Detroit, in the year 2000 with me on different weight classes. But what pushed us through was that we had 3 people pushing together every morning. So it was very easy to focus on training, but it was also the group of people that we all had the same ambition, but the level was so high with the quality of training. So that got us all into the same position. It's easy to look back like, okay, yeah, of course you need all this, but when you start, it's not probably there for you. So kind of the takeaways that I want to, from the martial arts to give you at this stage is that, yeah, start with the growth plan. So I knew what is required to get the black belt. I kind of envisioned in my head that what would it require for me to become the world champion? What needs to happen? What do I need to do? And it all started with first training and learning. Train enough so you can learn more. If you miss a training that day, you don't learn anything. So that was quite simple for me. You have to find the right people, the right master, the right coach, but also the right team to train with, because only with that high quality level of training, you actually advance to the next level yourself. But one thing that I didn't mention yet was that I was also teaching others. I felt it was nice when I learned something, so I was trying to teach others. So that actually helped me to learn better, because I had to put the technique or the idea that I had in my mind and being able to coach somebody else. So actually I learned a lot with that. So it wasn't only me training. There's limitation with your body that you can do. In my best weeks, I was training 40 hours per week, so I couldn't endure more training. So I had to teach others and watch how they developed and learn from that. So that was kind of the lessons that I learned from martial arts that I took. But then going for studies. On the contrary of martial arts, which I had super passion, so I thought that studies, when kind of high school and then university levels, I thought that let's spend as little time as possible in the classroom. I realized that if I pay attention, the teacher, the lecturer, the professor, they were actually telling me what they're going to ask in the exams. So I noticed this, and then when I was skipping the classes and trying to read the books, I had hard time of answering the exams. Then I noticed that if I sit in front and just focus, so actually hear what they're going to ask and learn from them. So I kind of developed this way of focusing and concentrating. I entered a class that you had this how to write speed writing course with 10 fingers. So I realized that if I write at the same time when the professor speaks and I write everything down, so I actually write the book of the classes, which is then super easy for me to study, because then I can always remember that I was the one who was writing. So I was utilizing these techniques of making a better memory for myself and really having a concise book of notes that's easy for me to go back, rather than those huge books of everything. I was at the graduate business school at Gothenburg University, and we had this kind of a project because I was studying international management. So we had, as a group, a company coming there, and we had to do a project together. They talked about the problems that they wanted to solve, and our task with a group of 30 students was to actually help them to build a strategy for that problem. After the professor introduced the project, and then the company left, so we kind of got in a fight that what was important. I had written the notes the same way as I had previously as well. So I said that, wait a minute, I can share this with everybody. I tried to dictate all the words that came out so that everybody can actually go back and see what they were actually saying. What the end result was that, of course, everybody was happy, but they also kind of chose me to be the leader of the project, because I showed initiative not to care about my grade, but care about the whole class. And that was kind of a good leadership lesson for me at that stage, the understanding that the leader actually is not caring about the position, but how the team will succeed. So that was kind of the good learning that I had from the school on working on that, and actually got me to the place where I graduated with the best thesis award at there. So lessons learned from my studies for me were that I work smart. So of course you need to work hard, but if you don't have time, to me a stupidity is to write notes on your paper first and then write them on your computer. That's a waste of time, unless that's good for your learning and you know that you need twice to repeat the same thing. So I was spending the time on other parts, not copying myself. Listening and focusing helped me to get there. So I was kind of learning to listen and get the main ideas off when somebody's speaking. So that helps me to then answer the exams better. Taking notes and helping others came hand in hand, that I didn't first realize. I was doing it for myself, but then it actually helped others that got me to the next level as well as a future leader. Then sharing some experiences of my work life. So I after graduation, I moved to Ireland for a while, and then with my current wife, we moved back to Finland in 2007, there around that. So I was applying for jobs. I thought that sales jobs would be the best and easiest for me, since I'm a master in international management, so I actually don't have any expertise. Nobody wants to hire me for anything. Then I also realized that sales is easy for me because I've been using to watch people in the eye and see who wins the fight, so I thought the sales would be about the same. And with Media Planet, it was about that. So I realized that, okay, the same focus that I had with martial arts, so focusing on working hard. So I actually realized that if you work extra, so making sales calls, so if everybody else is making 20 calls, but you make 22, you actually sell more. And often with those extra 2 calls in the big run, so it wasn't just 10% more, it was 20% more. But I was also learning from others. So with sales, it was easy to look around and see who sells the best and trying to learn from them. We got the sales training, but then I also realized that a lot of good sales books around there. So I was trying test and learning. So I picked up a book, read the book, and kind of pick up the tips, and then tried those in my calls and improve my skills. The same way it came here, that the controllability came from doing enough, so then you can control what you do in sales. I managed to get a position of to be a country manager for Media Planet in Finland, so running a team of 20 people there in the end. A few years later, I went to Kauppalehti running a kind of a business paper in Finland. So what I learned there was actually that as a leader again, so with Media Planet, I thought when I advanced to the country manager level, so I was the one who was saying what to do. But at Kauppalehti, there were seasoned salespeople, who some of them being in the company for more than 30 years. So as a youngster, I kind of need to earn my credits there. But I understood that leadership is not given to me because of the position, I need to earn it. So I started supporting and helping the team and passing on information from one and to another. So that helped the team succeed. So I noticed that if I was the link between two sales guys, helping them to understand what the other were doing better, so actually I was the link that is in improving the skills of everybody in the company. Then I went to Keski-Suomalainen PLC, so stock-listed company in Finland, and to become a sales director for national sales there. So the old kind of a media house with print papers and everything. So good learning for me was to talk with customers and hear what they wanted. So I learned that when the shift of the customers was moving on from what we were offering, so I actually started to pay more attention why they do that and what are they doing. So an old media company focusing a lot on the kind of print media. So I understood that Facebook marketing, Google AdWords, they are coming. Web pages are strong, content marketing, all these. So I was actually studying with customers to learn them and hearing what they wanted, and then building the processes for the company, saying that if we can offer you this, so what would you be able to buy? So I didn't look the other companies as competitors. I looked them as there's a reason why customers are buying. Why don't I understand that? And then I can probably help customers. So many times actually mid-sized companies that were buying from different sources where actually they trusted us, so they started to buy from us because I was actually able to talk with them in a comprehensive way, not just from our company focus. And that was a good learning for me of kind of expanding my scope of out of the box of the company's focus. So I provided value for the company as well, but moreover to the customers in many ways. Then nowadays at Nordic Business Forum, so for us, the teamwork is dreamwork, not only with our team, but also with customers. So we co-create everything. So everybody wants to have the best possible experience when we have it here. And the other one that I really love with the company is that the goal setting that we have. So already in 2011, the team of Nordic Business Forum was saying that in 2021 will be the most significant business conference in the world. They put it out on a spreadsheet, and I will show you soon how it looks like when you actually get that goal, that for 10 years goal. So how can you work with that? But before that, so kind of like the recap on the what I learned from my professional life to how to develop myself all the time. So ask and listen, so you get answers and you learn what the others are thinking. Always the work a bit extra is kind of an easy way. So I think in martial arts, the most stupid way to lose a fight is that you lack the condition to fight. So even if you are better in skills, but you just don't have the energy to fight. So if you lose a fight with that, that's the worst case you can happen. That has happened to me, but I've learned from that as well. So I think the same way in work life is that stupidity is that you just don't work hard enough to get kind of capitalize the opportunity that you can go for. Of course, depending on your ambition level where you want to go. Test and learn. So you will kind of when you try out something, you learn often. So don't be afraid of mistakes. So then you will learn when you test. Many times people think in their head what they can do, but with reality you can test and learn a lot more. And then looking out kind of outside of your own box and scope will actually teach you a lot more sometimes than what's only internally there available. With Nordic Business Forum, so I said 2011. Less than 2,000 people in the attendees. So already we were putting it in a spreadsheet. So what would it mean that if we grow to become the most significant business conference in the world? This year, 2020, in next week, we should have had the big event in Helsinki. We are now can't do it. We do an online conference, but then 2021, we are fully there. So kind of like even if we have had these hiccups there, so we're still fully focusing on what does it mean and kind of growing with customer base, but also with the quality that we're going to do that this 2021 will blow your mind. And of course, so how we work with this is the team that we have. Sometimes we use external team members. We use Pep, who's going to talk with you later on, and this grey-haired man here in the middle of the picture named George Clooney to help us there. But we all work as a team, fully focusing on having the growth mindset each time. So what we want to do is we have a kind of slogan that if we can just be better every day, so then in the end, we are so good that nobody else can be. So we just focusing on becoming a better step by step, like the same way as in martial arts. You start from the bottom, but step by step you grow when you do every day a little bit better. One of our biggest secrets is the attention to detail. So when we look at it, when we script, for instance, for the speeches, but or the events, so we might have even 10,000 items to take care of, and then take them one by one. We strongly believe that the detail is then the quality that shows in the end to the customer, and that fully focus. It's more of like a game to the whole team to become better in each detail and fully supporting each another. The same way as I had problems with the presentation, so I went for our marketing team, and they were helping me out with the presentation. So we all support each other's growth and have the growth mindset of doing great pretensions there. So kind of recapping the whole speech in few things. So if you have a growth plan for yourself, so you know what you need to develop, and that's an easy way to then start that. Let's develop these. My ambition as a professional, I stated it when I was 20 years old. So I want to become a CEO of an international, multinational company, and I said it would be stock listed company. Everything else is there at this stage, except we are not stock listed. I'm not sure if I fancy that either, but I've been training for the communications of a stock listed company CEO, so that if ever that happens, so I'm prepared. So sometimes you can also, when you have that growth plan, learn something that might be valuable in the future, might not be today, but will be there for the future. And that's something that I noticed every day, that nothing goes in vain. If you learn something, someday you will need that learning, and you can utilize it and make everything better for you. Stay curious and keep on learning. So you can pick up tools from anywhere. For online events, I've been watching The Bold and the Beautiful soap opera and picking up cues from there. So soap operas can teach you a lot of things of how to make moments matter, like that I just showed. Work hard but smart. So in working life, so of course hard work pays off, and then if you're smart with that what you do and put the focus on right things, so the results will come. But teach and help others. So this is one way of me trying to teach you as well what I learned. So I also learn when I'm preparing for the presentation that what did I actually learn in my life, which helps you in many ways. Kind of ending up, so there are many routes to the top of the mountain, and you might some part work alone, but if you're walking on a mountain, so you find information, you learn from others, you work as a group, there are many routes to get to the top. But one thing I can promise you, that it's not an accident that the people who have managed to get to the top that are there. So let's just choose the route that fits for you. Thank you.
Well, Aslak, thank you very much for this very energetic and useful presentation. We do have a couple of minutes to take some questions as well. And
Yes.
so the first one I would like to pass on is the following. You are a former sportsman, but what would be your advice to people who haven't practiced any sports? Can they learn similar principles in some other environment?
Of course, yes. It doesn't. I used to play the violin when I was a child, so I think the same things apply there. So it depends on you. How I think it's more on the passion and working hard to achieve your goal. So that's often in sports. Sports is measured, so that's why it's easy for us to kind of understand have we developed or not. But there are a lot of ways. So I'm pretty sure that all of you have passion for something, and when you have actually worked hard, so you learn from that. So you learn from yourself about how to learn. What does the passion do to you? So it can be anything. It can be culture, it can be reading, or anything that you are passionate about. So that's what I refer to as sports myself.
Okay, very good. And the next question. Would you prefer online workshops to learn, or do you rather turn to professional books? And do you stick to one topic, or are you keeping it versatile?
Well, that is a super complex question. I think I have to say that it changes on various time to time. Nowadays, when I have two small kids, I have hard time of reading a book. It's too slow for me. That's why I nowadays prefer to watch online webinar, seminar, whatever conferences that I think that the speaker is kind of putting in few 20 minutes the whole content of the book, and I learn quickly and make notes of that. But there are times when I prefer to read a lot, because I think that the reading, the wording is so good, and they've been paying so much attention, so there's a lot in between the lines. And the same way when I read, so I actually write the kind of the thoughts that I had, what did I learn from each sentence if I can, but it makes it quite slow, but then in the end I learn a lot. I focus on some areas that I see that I need to develop, but sometimes it's very comprehensive. comprehensive. So I try to go out actually to trainings that I would have no interest, so sometimes even to cooking training. So that just learn something from there that I didn't know before. So sometimes it's kind of easy learning with those that I'm not good at, and sometimes really focusing on that what I should be an expert of.
Okay, so the key may sometimes be just to try out a cooking class. That's a good tip to take away.
Yeah, become hungry already, so yeah.
While our listeners and viewers are submitting further questions, we do have one from Aku as well. So Aku, do you want to ask yours?
My question is, you mentioned a few times taking notes. And my experience on taking notes is that earlier when I was writing notes on paper, it usually ended up in a big mess because it's difficult to create a structure on paper notes, and it's difficult to follow up on them. So where do you take notes, and what is your advice on taking notes?
Yeah, that is a good question. I used to do that same, and my handwriting was bad, so it was really hard to come back to that. What I'm doing is actually I've built in a way that I've practiced this for years, almost 20 years, is that I know how I think, so I write the way I think. And I make with this kind of 1 to 2 sentences and then another sentence like that. So I put it actually on Google Drive automatically, so then it's easy to find. But I call that, I write with search engine optimized, so I know. So for instance, if I sit with the customer, so I first write with the names that these are the people in here, this was the company, so it's easy for me to find the notes. And then I write it in a way that kind of I have a structure, so when I'm doing sales calls, so I have a structure of how to go with that, so I know where to find, so I can write down, for instance, a topic of problems, so what the customer had, then I have solutions that we talked about. So I try to kind of have titles for them where they are. When I'm listening to a speech, so I kind of try to replicate on what I learn at the same time, but try to write what the speaker is saying, so that's why I had to learn the speed writing, so that I can follow it up and make it there. But what I've noticed with anything is that the more you do, the better you get at, and then you see that, oh, these notes that I had 5 years ago were not that comprehensive, so now I can do them better. But I write them with the dates and the names and everything, so it's easy for me to go back. The good example was when COVID-19 happened, so I knew that Jim Collins was talking about this, how to actually manage a crisis. So he was talking about the Stockdale paradox, where prisoners of war, who were the ones who survived, and it was more on that, not the ones that were optimistic that I will get through this situation, but they were the ones who were knowing that they didn't lose the faith, but they were not expecting to get rescued. So I used the same, but I knew that there was that. So I had Jim Collins, I had read his books, I've written his speeches, so I found it there easily, and then I kind of got the plan with my notes, and then I was easy to communicate with the team that this is the situation, we believe that we will get through, we just don't know when, and this is what we learned from that. So those notes helped me to lead in a better way in these circumstances.
I think we have time for 2 more questions. So here's one regarding Nordic Business Forum. You have seen great leaders on this stage. So far, who is your favorite? And who do you recommend we should follow, read more about, learn more about?
That's impossible. Unfortunately, I've learned a lot from all, and that's what we try to do. So we try to scout the best speakers that will teach us. But what I did, actually, I used to be a customer of Nordic Business Forum, so I'm not a founder. So I was looking at the lineup and then following and reading the books of them. So you can find that information on Wikipedia on our website, who were there, and just glance through and see what kind of ideas. And new ones come all the time. So I unfortunately can't say any particular, just follow. I already know that today you will be hearing great speeches again. So maybe following these upcoming speakers might be valuable for you.
That is a good pointer. And the last one, I'm sure you've given it a lot of thought. What is the one piece of advice you would give your younger self?
Yeah, I know that question is asked a lot, but I just say that, like, try hard enough that you are satisfied with what you do. So kind of like, I've lost a fight in martial arts where I was afraid of losing so much that I lost, even though in the end, when I looked at it, so I should have won. So kind of, I think it's more on like that. You can lose sometimes, you don't succeed, but as long as you're happy with the efforts that you put in for that, so that's all that matters. So kind of don't focus on the short term, just live long term and happily. So I hope that this is also seen that I'm actually super happy to talk to you. This is a great day for me. So every day can be like this. So I'm happy.
And we are very happy to have you. Thank you for taking the time and being with us today.
Thank you.
And now we are moving on to our next speaker. I really am not kidding you when I say that he has a dream job. Pep Rosenfeld is listen to this, a nerd comedian. He uses comedy to make hard to communicate messages land and stick. He has even made Barack Obama laugh. You should watch his TED Talk to learn why a dog makes a better companion than two newborn twins and why making your opponent laugh may be the best strategy for survival. Pep, the floor is all yours.
Good afternoon. I'm Pep Rosenfeld, and as you heard, I'm from Boom, Chicago. How's everybody doing? Right. This is a remote presentation. I can't hear anything you say. We're going to get used to this. For those of you that don't know, Boom Chicago is a comedy theater that I formed in 1993 in Amsterdam. Why Amsterdam? Well, not for the reason you think. No, it was for the drugs. So that was 27 years ago. By the way, congratulations, Sorainen, on your 25th anniversary. That's 2 years younger than Boom Chicago, but who's counting? No one. Anyway, in those 27 years, we've grown to the point that we're one of the longest running comedy shows in the Netherlands. And it's awesome for me because I get to travel around the world, sometimes remotely, working with theaters, festivals, business events. But I have to say, it's always a pleasure to be right here in my own office in front of my very favorite group of people of them all, lawyers and support team specialists from Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Belarus dedicated to prosperity in the region, as well as their clients and cooperating law firms. So thank you very much. Now, I've been invited here this afternoon to speak on the topic, growing the leader inside yourself, which I have to admit sounds like a pretty heavy topic for someone whose background is comedy. In fact, one of you actually asked anonymously, you coward, someone asked if my being a comedian will inhibit my ability to discuss serious issues. And to you, I can only say, I think the answer is, we are about to find out. But there are 3 reasons I believe qualify me for talking to you about growing your inner leader. First, as a company founder and the artistic director for that company for 15 years, I actually am a leader. Second, I didn't take actually, part of A is I didn't actually take classes on how to lead people or run the company. If I'm honest, I didn't even want to start the company. I just wanted to make fun of stuff. But remember those drugs I joked about earlier? That was no joke. That was serious. And while we were there in Amsterdam, we had what will go down in history as the best stoner idea ever. We decided to start a theater company in Amsterdam. After all, we were doing comedy shows in Chicago. They speak English in Amsterdam. There's tourists. It made super duper sense. But unlike many ideas, we wrote ours down and acted on it. But it wasn't a plan. It was just a random idea. So I'm not just a leader. I'm an accidental leader. You know what I mean? I actually had to decide to grow the leader inside me, just like many of you. Because after all, I didn't start out like this. I started out like this. Now, the second reason is that I host a lot of events where a lot of leaders and those who research and study leaders speak. And by the way, I never really realized that studying leadership is such a cottage industry, but it most certainly is. I mean, just to name a few, I've hosted the Nordic Business Forum, the Next Web, Change 19, and the internal events. Oh my goodness. I've been part of so many internal events. The stories I could tell you, but you'll have to wait for me to release my book. They should have made me sign an NDA. No, they most of them have lawyers just like you guys. They certainly did make me sign the NDA. But I've heard from quite a few of these great leaders and those that study them. From CEOs of major companies to folks like Simon Sinek, Brene Brown, Sarah Blakely, Gary Vaynerchuk, Carla Harris, Adam Grant, and Barack Obama, I have learned from the best. I heard all this information, I took it in, made notes, and synthesized it just for you. In this way, I'm kind of like a legal support team, except I probably won't be replaced by AI within the next 3 years. Finally, the third reason. I realize that there are 2 different kinds of people. One group takes responsibility for their actions. The other always finds a loophole, always finds a way that it's not their fault. One group uses clear and direct language to make sure they're understood. The other uses convoluted sentences and no one can follow them. One group is willing to talk to everyone. The other prefers to speak to people just like them, or worse, only people that pay them. Of course, These two groups I'm talking about are leaders and lawyers. Now, is that fair? Of course not. But it is fair to say you guys get a bad rap. A lot of people are like, lawyers have no morals. They charge too much. All they care about is money. And of course, the people that say this about lawyers are called clients. To be honest, when I told my friends I was doing this talk, they were like, awesome, who's it for? And I didn't know what to say. You know, I didn't want to be embarrassed. So I was like, oh, who's it for? It's for pornographers. Yes, I'm speaking to pornographers. And my friends were like, what? Pornographers? Well, at least it's not a bunch of lawyers. So I think we've all got a lot to share with each other. And I've learned a few things that I'm happy to share with you today. But I want to say this before we start. The path is different from everyone. Your leadership journey may vary from mine. The best advice I can give you is to try all the tools you're offered and then use the ones that work best for you. I decided to grow the leader inside me because I wanted to create a great comedy show, and my team, actors, technicians, they were all depending on me. This was my purpose. And according to Simon Sinek, see, just for you. According to Simon Sinek, every good company has a purpose, a cause around which the team can rally. Yours is fantastic. Oh my God. Growing prosperity in the Baltic states and Belarus by helping clients succeed in business. Oh, mwah! Oh, that is a beautiful purpose. And I understand this purpose was developed 7 years ago at a partners meeting in Malta. So let me say this, congratulations partners for going to Malta. But when I heard this, it made me think of two things. One, I wonder what other examples of leadership come from Malta. Two, Malta, isn't that where they filmed a lot of Game of Thrones? And by the way, it totally is. So while Malta is where Sorainen made some great leadership decisions and discovered its company purpose, Malta is also where King Joffrey, perhaps the worst leader ever, forced his wife-to-be to look at her father's head on a spike. And it's where King Drago, I call him Aquaman, married the mother of dragons and then consummated that marriage totally against her will. And I guess my point here is that there's no wrong time or place for a leader to think about his or her purpose and about the purpose of his or her team and company. So let's talk about leaders at Sorainen. Now, as I understand it, the way it tends to work here is that the best lawyers are promoted to leadership positions, right? I have to admit, I heard this and I was like, ooh, I don't know if that's the best system. Because being great at a job doesn't necessarily mean you'll be awesome at coaching other people to do the job. You know, without growing your inner leader, the best you might be able to offer young leaders is something to the tune of, oh, you want to be good? Well, watch and learn, baby. But you need to do better. I'd also say that the job of leader is more than just the job description. It's what you make of it. It's how you see your role. Leadership comes, and I think this is important, leadership comes from whether or not you're excited about leading the people or not. If you're mostly concerned with yourself, you're going to see meetings with your team as just like to-do lists. You know, you'll be talking to the person you're leading and you'll be like, yeah, targets, check. Positive words, check. Criticism, check. Pat, pat, pat on the back. Out you go. Next. But if you're concerned about your team, you put them before yourself. This explains the title of Sinek's book, Leaders Eat Last. Leaders want to bring out the best in their people. And if this doesn't turn you on, that's fine. It doesn't have to turn you on. Everyone is different. But if it doesn't turn you on, you probably won't be a great leader. But if you love your team and you want to push them toward the company's purpose, you can push yourself to be a better leader. How? Well, I looked at your current leadership competencies for the various types of folks at Sorainen. And I'm not going to lie, it was a long pair of slides with lots of words and small fonts. Here, let's take a look. Whoa, man, oh man, what is it with you legal people? You actually like this slide, don't you? You're looking at the slide going, yeah, I hope there's two of them. And by the way, there were two of them. I'm only showing you one. But if I can oversimplify, and let's face it, with only 20 minutes, oversimplifying is my only realistic option, a few things stood out on all of them. First of all, take personal responsibility for your actions, your career, and your colleagues. Give and receive feedback with openness, honesty, and respect. Empower, coach, teach, and recruit new teammates. Be calm, positive, and flexible. And of course, listen. And I'm pretty sure I just summed up those ginormous slides in just 35 words. You're welcome. But hey, I get it. You're lawyers. Why use 35 words when you've got 2 full pages to fill? Now, let me take a look at 2 of these points. I'm afraid I don't have time to dive into all 5. First of all, feedback. I want to focus first on giving feedback. And when you're giving feedback, you can be honest or dishonest, and you can be kind or unkind. And I even made one of those 4-quadrant charts that everyone loves. Now, both of these are choices, and you have to choose to be unkind or kind and to be honest or dishonest. Now, I think we all know people that are honest but unkind. I live in Holland, and this is Dutch people to a T. They are brutally honest. I mean, sometimes a Dutch person might be trying to give you a compliment, and it comes out sounding like an insult. Like if one of my Dutch colleagues wanted to tell me, "Hey, Pep, did you lose weight?" He'd probably say something like, "Whoa, you used to be very fat." Then there are people that are dishonest but kind. Those are the ones that say, "Oh my God, I love that dress," even when the dress looks like this. But here's a pro tip. Being dishonest is never, ever kind. Then you've got people that are dishonest and unkind. Let's see, can I think of an example of an unkind, dishonest person? Oh, yes, that will do. That would be like when this fella says things like, "Sleepy Joe Biden is going to take away your guns and your freedom because he hates America and he's secretly the devil." You don't want to be that person. What you want to be is kind and honest. Your photo here. Because good leaders are honest, but they're also kind. And it takes work, and it's a choice. Now, let's talk about listening. Good leaders need to be humble, and that means that they need to be willing to listen from anyone at any time. As Sarah Blakely says, see, Sarah Blakely, just for you. As she says, leaders have to be willing to ask why. They have to be willing to look dumb, because the worst leader is one who thinks they know everything and has a closed mind to new information. If you want to grow as a leader, or even as a person, I recommend you think hard about Stephen Covey's 5th habit. Covey? Seek first to understand and then to be understood. And no, I never hosted an event where Stephen Covey spoke. He died in 2012, but I can read. Anyway, in all honesty, listening is the best advice I can give anyone who wants to lead. It's also, by the way, the best way to learn. I think the best leader regards every conversation as a learning opportunity and thus as a two-way experience. And you can't go into these conversations thinking you know exactly what the other person's going to say. You ever do that? You ever go into a conversation and someone's talking and you think to yourself, "Oh yeah, I know where this is going. I know what they're about to say, and I know how this story ends." And then you do one of two things. You either sort of start going through your to-do list, in your head, and then you just wait for them to stop talking because their lips move, and then you go like, "Oh yeah, we'll get right back to you on that." Or you do the thing where you interrupt them and finish their sentence for them, which, spoiler alert, nobody likes. That's not leadership. That is actively avoiding what someone is saying. So you got to try to actively listen. And while you're doing that, I recommend you don't shoot ideas down too quickly. At Boom Chicago, we have a motto: love every idea for a minute. We try to say yes to ideas and talk about them, even if we don't use them eventually. And by the way, yes does not mean yes, but. You don't want to be the person that's like, "Oh, yes, that's a good idea, but we don't really have the budget this year." Sometimes people say yes, but, and it's just a yes, it's just a no dressed up in a yes costume to come to the meeting. Yes, but is like when the person you're dating says to you, "Oh, no, we're not breaking up. We're just seeing other people." Yeah, maybe that's true, but more likely is I better go freshen up my Tinder profile. So I try to say yes and to ideas, and I recommend you try to do the same thing. When you say yes and actually build on what the person is telling you, you tell the person behind the idea that you're willing to think it through with them. Even if you eventually say no to the idea, they're heard and they feel respected, and that's huge. That's how you create a safe psychological work environment, one that encourages risk-taking and innovation. This psychological safety, says Brene Brown, she says this is a key factor in stimulating high-performance teams. It's the factor when Google did their Project Aristotle to study teams that succeed. And who knows, if you brainstorm with a yes and mentality, you might get to an idea you never would have thought of if you'd said no to the original one. So listening and saying yes and are great ways to get the most out of your team. But let's face it, sometimes when you talk to your team, you watch their eyes and you see them go into the famous fight or flight response. Fight or flight, right? Back in caveman times, when our primitive ancestors met up with a predator, their primitive brains were like, "Oh, what do? We can fight or we can run like hell." And, some of the ones that fought lost the fight, and some of the ones that ran got caught, and their genes were taken out of the gene pool, and that's evolution. And I was thinking about this, and I thought to myself, wait, hang on. What about my ancestors? What about caveman Pep? Because if my ancestors were anything like me back in those days, they weren't great at fighting, and they weren't fast at running, so how did I end up here? And it made me think there must be a third way. Make your opponent laugh. I feel like when primitive Pep met up with a predator, and the predator was like, I will eat you, my primitive ancestor was like, no eat, no eat. Listen, two Neanderthals walk into bar, and first Neanderthal say, nothing. Neanderthal brainstem, too primitive for verbal speech. And the predator was like, huh? Huh? Ah! And he was disarmed. And maybe he let my ancestor go. Or maybe he was so charmed that he tried to mate with my ancestor, which became the world's first HR problem. Now, this must be why I'm here. Fight or flight is what a lot of teammates feel when facing a leader. And that's why I believe a joke, especially a self-depreciating joke, can take that natural instinct, fight or flight, and add a third option. See the humor and the humanity in the situation. Humor can get people to engage with each other, with the difficult situations they're facing, and yes, with the person talking. That's you. And this is great news for leaders. When a leader is willing to laugh at themselves and they tell the team that they understand their flaws, that their ego is in check. And that's huge. So let's go back to your big 5 traits. Your big 5 traits are these. And if you're choosing a leader, you would definitely search for these attributes. And this is good to know because in my home country, the USA, we are about to choose a new leader. And I don't know what you've heard, but it's already been 4 years since we said goodbye to the old American president, Barack Obama, and said hello to our current American president, Vladimir Putin. No, it's Trump. And I bring Trump up again because you know how you can tell these are the attributes of a good leader? Because this is exactly the opposite of how Donald Trump does things. Think about it. Imagine if Donald Trump was a partner here at Sorainen. A junior lawyer would be like, Mr. Trump, I'm here for some feedback. And Trump would be like, great, because I have all the best feedback. I know I got great feedback. I'm fantastic. And here it is. You are a loser. You're not a very smart person. Sad. And he'd be like, oh, well, in that case, do you have some time to mentor me? Offer me some coaching? Oh, you want coaching? Of course you do. Let me ask you something. What's in it for me? Not some sucker that coaches for nothing. I mean, unless you look like my daughter. Then I'd be happy to offer you some very personal coaching. Here, sign this NDA. Okay, would you listen for a moment? Of course, I'm the best listener. I'm world-class listener. I'm the best listener. I've got all the best ears. I'm going to make your career great again. By the way, you're fired. So congratulations on these 5 traits for leaders. If you want to start growing the leader inside you and embodying these, I recommend you also commit yourself to these 3 things I've recommended. Commit yourself to listening, to having a yes and mentality, and to using self-depreciating humor when you can. But there's one more thing I haven't mentioned yet, and that is emotions. Because many people, especially in data-filled worlds like law, believe the data speaks for itself, but it totally does not. You have to speak for the data. And while the law is convincing to many, what convinces most human beings is emotion. You connecting to the emotion of what you're saying and your audience's ability to connect to your emotion is what is going to make your point come across. So I want to try something. And to do this, I need you to participate. Now, I can't hear you and I can't see you, but I need you to speak up right there wherever you are in your home. It will feel weird, but it'll be fun. We're going to count to 21, but every 3 numbers, I'm going to ask you to continue with a different emotion. It's going to be easy. First, we'll say 1, 2, 3, and we're just going to be neutral, but be loud and proud while you're neutral. Here we go. And 1, 2, 3. Excellent. You've nailed neutral. As lawyers, legal assistants, and clients, I am not surprised at all. For 4, 5, and 6, we're going to be happy. But I want you to be super happy. Show me your happiness in your face, your body, your voice. Really be happy. And here we go. And 4, 5, 6. Oh, I'm pretty happy. And you're watching me going, we believe the drug story now. 7, 8, 9, I want you to be angry. So don't be afraid to show your anger. Again, your face, your body, your voice for 7, 8, 9. Here we go. And 7, 8, 9. Ooh, these digital events, you can even get close to the camera for emphasis. I mean, don't get too close. It's not a TikTok video. But, okay, 10, 11, 12, you're afraid. Now, nobody likes to show fear, especially in the workplace. We're going to let it out now, and it's going to feel good. So show me your fear. 10, 11, 12. And 10, 11, 12. Great. 13, 14, 15 is going to be, you got a secret and you want to tell the secret, but you can't. It's like you won the lottery, but if you tell, they won't give you the money. So that's going to be 13, 14, 15. Here we go. And 13, 14, 15. Okay. 16, 17, 18 is your TED Talk. Okay. So be pompous and over important. Okay. For 16, 17, 18. And 16, 17, 18. Boom. I sound a little bit like a senior partner, don't I? Finally, 19, 20, and 21, we're going to be in love. And look, I don't want it to be weird, so like don't look straight at the camera. Look away from the camera. I don't want this to be a creepy thing, all right? So 19, 20, 21, in love. And 19, 20, 21. Oh, love. Love feels a lot like happy. By the way, if your love feels a lot like angry, you need therapy. All right, look, I did this for a reason, and the reason is you all know what these emotions look like, and you know what they sound like, and you know what they feel like. Don't be afraid to show them, because it's how you're going to connect with colleagues, the people you are trying to motivate, and it's going to be how you connect with everybody in your life, clients as well. I also want you to be able to recognize those emotions in others. Good leaders know how their people are feeling, and they're not afraid to ask the follow-up questions. Okay, that was it. And I thank you very much for your time and attention. I am Pep Rosenfeld. That is at Pep Rosenfeld on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You will not find me on Snapchat, TikTok, or Facebook. Thank you very much, and success. Happy 25th.
Thank you very much, Pep. This was very entertaining. And we have quite many questions for you, actually. And just to remind everyone listening at the moment that you are also allowed to place your question. Just use the Q&A button next to the speaker's name, and you can place your question. You can also see the other questions asked, and you can also upvote the question you like most. And we have one clear favorite from all the questions.
I can't lie. I'm very curious what the favorite question is going to be.
All right. I hope I don't disappoint you. The question is a bit lawyerish, I would say. Can you see how different cultures form the leader attitude or leader type? Are some cultures better in leading than others, just naturally because they rely on understanding instead of leading with fear?
Wow, I honestly don't know if I'm the right person to ask that question to. I get asked all the time if comedy is different for different cultures, and my answer is always everybody thinks it's this different, but it's really this different, and then a lot of different reference bases. But I mean, you always hear that certain Asian cultures, they're very deferential to leaders, and in America we have decided that scientists and masks are the devil. So I mean, there's clearly a wide range of leadership, but I don't want to generalize. I suspect the way that leaders are going to emerge has a lot more to do, based on what I've observed, with company culture and the examples from the top than with the national culture. I'm sure there's real hardcore, follow the leader companies in more laid back countries, and I'm sure there's more laid back companies in strict, authoritarian. I mean, not authoritarian, but in stricter countries as well. So there I kind of weaseled out of that in a lawyerly way.
All right. Yes, you also mentioned Brené Brown in your talk, and it's obviously takes a lot of courage to be a leader. So it's not for everyone, and you have to dare and be ready to lose several times, and it's really not for everyone. What would you say?
I mean, I'd say if I can continue quoting Brené Brown, that to me I think a lot of people feel like, in order to lead, I've got to be this strong, inscrutable character whose shields are always up. But she would disagree. She would say the real bravery comes from being willing to be vulnerable, willing to show your soft side. And with that, I agree 100%. I think that it's real important. I mean, obviously leaders can't, buckle under pressure, and they can't look indecisive. That's bad leadership. But I think it's when someone's like, I can't be made fun of, and I mean, again, can think of a leader who refuses to be made fun of and never is self-depreciating, and he's a pretty bad leader, and he's got orange skin. So, I think the real courage, I mean, it takes a lot of courage to be in charge of something, because if it fails, it's on you. Like, I think that goes without saying, but I think it also takes a ton of courage to put your team ahead of you and to be willing to open up about what you're vulnerable about as well. I think people have an instinct to bond on how tough they are, but I think people bond the best on how vulnerable they are.
Right. You as a nerd comedian, and by the way, I would like to understand what's the difference between a comedian and a nerd comedian, but still, of course you enjoy, I would believe, being in the center of attention, but does a leader need to enjoy being in the center of attention? And the second part of the question would be, what is your quality as a nerd comedian that we lawyers should take over in our everyday life? What do you think?
Wow, those are two interesting questions I've never really thought of before. What was part one of that? Second part is what are the aspects of nerd comedian? What was the first part again? Give me the ending.
Nerd comedian versus comedian.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I say I'm a nerd comedian, what I mean is I'm a recovering nerd. Like I was on the math team in high school and the debate team, and I didn't really date much. Like I was a nerd, and back then it was tough. Back then, nerds would get beat up by the cool people. Now, of course, nerds are the cool people, and the people that used to beat us up, drive the Ubers that take us to events when they're happening in person. So I just think it turns out that stuff that nerds are interested in, everyone's interested in. Now, what can lawyers do that's also nerdish? Well, I think the thing that lawyers already do is you guys look at a million different data points and you sort of find out what the common thread is. I think that's what the best nerd comedians do. The best nerd comedians are like, oh, this is their purpose, and they discovered their purpose in Malta. What else happened in Malta? And how does that have to do with leadership? I think being a nerd comedian means making nerdy connections between something we're talking about and something nerdy, and then connecting them in a funny way. Now, if you can connect them in a way that frees the client, then you can star in a movie about lawyers.
All right. Well, I think you answer what is the best thing about lawyers, but what do you think is the worst?
Gosh, I think lawyers get a bad rap. Like I wasn't kidding when I said lawyers get a bad rap. I guess I really think the thing that is most annoying about lawyers, and I think this is because I do it sometimes myself as a nerd, is just too many words. Stop it with the long emails. Stop it with the charts that nobody wants to look at. Ernest Hemingway, fewer words and make them count. Every slide in the PowerPoint doesn't have to be filled. Leave some white space.
All right. Well, we should really try that. So we also have one question from Aku Sorainen. Aku, are you ready with your question?
Giving a great fresh view on our core purpose and elements of our strategy. And I very much like your comment that every word counts. That is very, very important thing what we also educate our young lawyers, that when they write something, then every word counts. Take every word out which doesn't count. But I have the question to you is that you mentioned one interesting comment in your presentation about leaders eating last. Could you a little bit elaborate more on that?
Sure, although it's me quoting Simon Sinek's book, Leaders Eat Last. But when I saw him at the Nordic Business Forum, he was just really into leaders eat last because the team should eat lunch first, and the leader should make sure that all the business is done, and that the leader is sometimes in the leader's office doing leadership stuff while everybody else is eating and having a good time. And if there's no food left, well, leader's going to deal with it. But leaders eat last is really about how the leader shouldn't feel like. I used to have a motto when I would bike ride to my rehearsals, at Boom Chicago. If I was running late, I would say to myself, "You make the rules. You don't break the rules." I think a lot of leaders think because they're the leader, they should break the rules, but because they're the leader, they should follow the rules, and they should help everybody else as they're dealing with the rules. And I think that's what leaders eat last means. Leaders have to put the team first and themselves second.
but I am quoting Simon Sinek there.
Okay.
Except
Well,
for the
thank you very much.
That was pure Pep.
Thank you, Pep. It was really our pleasure to have you. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's great to be here. Thanks.
So about the next speaker. In the business environment and in the society in general, we hear people often using fancy, fashionable terms, such as mindfulness, Bitcoin, fintech, third-party funding, synergy, collaboration, filling the slides. I do believe each of you would have something to add to this list. But it also happens that either people's understanding of these terms is superficial, or they actually do not know what these terms stand for. Therefore, we have invited Professor Heidi Gardner from Harvard Law School to tell us more about an activity that everyone has heard of, but is always the process of mastering, collaboration, and how to maximize it for the benefit of your business in a very smart way. If you have a question to Heidi, please place it using the Q&A button next to her name on the right side of your screen already during her speech. Heidi, welcome. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much. And I am actually going to use big words, and I'm going to fill up my slides, and I'll tell you why it is that we're doing that. First of all, welcome everyone. Pep, that was a delight to listen to you. Aslak, it was a real learning experience for me. It's a pleasure to be able to engage in this way. So if I can just get a thumbs up that we're seeing slides, that would be fantastic. And then we will dive right in. We're talking today about smart collaboration. Now, smart collaboration for in-house legal teams in particular. Let's figure out what it is that we mean by smart collaboration and how this might be different from all the other ways that you think about collaboration, all the other ways that you might imagine you're already collaborating. And my challenge to you is, are you really? So here's what we embarked on more than a decade ago at Harvard University. We started on a research project, and I will be the first to tell you that my best research ideas are never my own. This is where listening is critically important. I was in the Harvard executive classroom. I was teaching 150 highly experienced business leaders, and we were talking about teamwork. And what they asked is, it's one thing to get a team to work effectively together when we've got a structure in place and everyone knows their role and there's a hierarchy and sort of a mini pyramid. But how do we get the top of all of those pyramids to work together? In other words, how do we take high ego, high autonomy people like lawyers, for example, to put aside their ego, to admit when they don't know everything, when they might not be the smartest person in the room, or if they are, even then, when do they need people with complementary skill sets and expertise? How do we get those kinds of people to work together? And that was a burning question for a lot of people in that room. And it set me off on a research journey that I've now been on for well over a decade. And at that point, we uncovered two trends that were at the time somewhat competing with each other, and at this point are absolutely crashing against one another. And together, it's the friction between them that creates the need for what we call smart collaboration. So what are those two trends? Well, first, and this probably sounds familiar to everyone, you are more specialized than you used to be. When you started your career, you were trying to figure out the realm where you were going to carve your niche. And over time, you went deeper and deeper and deeper into that domain. And perhaps you got specialized by the industry that you work in, by the type of law that you practiced, by jurisdiction or geography, and you became an expert in your own right. So that is perfectly functional and adaptive, and all of the scientists who study this will say this is incredibly important because knowledge is changing so fast that if you want to be the expert, you've got to specialize. So what's the problem? The problem is our problems. Right? The problem is that every issue worth investing in right now is characterized by the acronym VUCA. VUCA, do you know this one? VUCA. It stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. When we embarked on this research journey, I could have never imagined a global pandemic hitting us like it has recently. It is about the most VUCA concoction of events that I have seen in my lifetime and perhaps yours. volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. This is another way of saying the problems that we face today, those worth investing our time to think about, are multifaceted, multidimensional. And it is the tension between those big, broad problems and the narrow experts that demands us to engage in smart collaboration. What do we mean by that term? We mean that it is the bringing together, the integration of people with different kinds of expertise, different knowledge bases, different perspectives, different specialisms. And when they come together and they knit together their different pieces of knowledge into a unified whole, they create something that is more customized, more applicable, more useful, more innovative than any of them could do on their own. That's the smart part of smart collaboration. Let's just be clear. Some people use the term collaboration to mean that we all get along well together. Actually, you might be surprised to hear that if your focus is on creating a highly cohesive unit where everyone lets everyone else do their own thing, we respect each other so much that we wouldn't possibly interfere in your business, that can be anti-collaborative. You know, if we're so focused on harmony, we might not mix it up and get into the tough kinds of debates and challenges where real innovation happens, where we pressure test each other, and where we're able to bring together these different viewpoints and thought worlds to create a unified whole. So let's be clear, collaboration, smart collaboration, requires sometimes a little bit of conflict and conflict resolution, and it certainly requires people to challenge one another. I think both of our prior speakers have alluded to or even used the term psychological safety. This is a concept that's been explored by one of my colleagues at Harvard Business School for 2 decades at this point. How much psychological safety exists in your organization? Let me tell you, take a quick sidestep here. Psych safety. It was originally studied in literally a life or death situation. Amy Edmondson was studying surgical teams. There was a paradox. It seemed that the surgical teams who committed the most errors, doctors making mistakes, those were the ones that had the best patient outcomes. Their patients actually recovered better from surgery and lived longer afterward. How could that possibly be true? Well, it turns out those weren't the surgical teams that were making more mistakes. Those were the ones that were admitting it. In teams where people felt like they couldn't admit mistakes or learn from their mistakes or ask for help, those were the ones where the errors got buried, and unfortunately, so did the patients. What we know is that psychological safety, it's the environment where team members feel like they can ask for help, they can tell each other what's going wrong, they can be honest with one another and transparent. If you feel like you're creating that kind of psychological safety within your legal team and within the business environment, you are much more likely to be at the forefront of understanding where issues will arise. It will increase your predictive powers, and it's going to increase your ability to learn from each other. And that's going to be critically important. And that's all part of what smart collaboration entails. So if you've got a to-do list in front of you, if you're making some of those notes that we heard about earlier, write down psychological safety and explore with your team the extent to which people engage in this. If, by the way, there's not a lot of psychological safety, you're probably not going to hear it directly. You're going to have to figure it out and ask yourself, when is the last time people turned to you for advice or help? When they weren't just sucking up to the leader, they were actually genuinely asking for input or even admitting a mistake. That's a great sign of really strong leadership, because it's putting the people first and allowing everyone to learn from what's happening around them. It's a critical part of smart collaboration. So the book that I wrote, Smart Collaboration for In-House Legal Teams, again, this was at the request of GCs. They saw the first book that I had published, Smart Collaboration, in 2017. I was thrilled when it became a Washington Post bestseller. And then I was a little dismayed when I started hearing from general counsel, hang on, you've neglected us and our problems are a little bit different. So whether you're in the law firm environment, whether you're in the corporate legal world, trust me, we've now explored through a couple of years of research what exactly is going on with smart collaboration for in-house legal teams. And it turns out we uncovered 4 different vectors of collaboration. All right, quiz time. Vector. Do you remember that one from Physics 101? Do you remember what a vector is? It's a line with direction and magnitude. Pep isn't the only one who gets to be a nerd here. All of us get to be nerds when we think about our physics class. Direction and magnitude, that's what makes a line into a vector. And we've identified 4 vectors of collaboration for in-house legal teams. The first one is within the legal team itself. Far more complicated than I had ever imagined. A few factors are making this more complicated these days. One is the fact that a lot of corporate legal teams now encompass more than just lawyers. You've got data scientists, you've got procurement specialists, you've got legal operations people, and these different people, different occupational backgrounds, different training means that it's harder to communicate and collaborate effectively and efficiently. We also know that there's all kinds of politics involved with this. I'm working right now with a huge global energy company, and collaboration isn't happening as effectively as it should between business units. And there seems to be a power struggle between business units and between the center and the business units themselves. So there is a lot of room here for improvement, even collaborating within the business of the law. Right? And then there's the collaboration with the business itself. So this is probably what springs to mind when a lot of in-house lawyers think about collaboration. They wonder, how can I collaborate more effectively with, whether it's the board and the non-executive directors, the executive committee and the C-suite, the frontline operators? How is it that you foster greater collaboration there, where your legal knowledge isn't just the legal knowledge, it is encapsulated in context of the business, so you're really solving deeper business problems with a legal angle to them, but you're tackling the commercial aspects of the business. And that's what it is that the executives are asking for. You know, when we undertook this research for our recent book, we didn't just go to general counsel and say, what makes you a great general counsel? We did that for several hundred lawyers that we interviewed in-house. But we also went to as many chief executives, COOs, CFOs, board members, and frontline leaders and managers and said, think about the best in-house lawyer you've ever worked with and what made them great, what differentiated them. Time and time again, we heard 2 pieces of advice. Number 1, don't be just a lawyer. And number 2, make sure you understand the business that we're in. And we asked, we went back to some of those GCs who are held up as brilliant general counsel. And we asked them, how did you become such a great business advisor? Some of them had actually embarked on a formal course of study and had gotten an MBA or some sort of a doctorate degree, even people studying business and management along the way. Not everyone has the luxury of time to invest in that degree of formal training. More often than not, what we heard is a single word: curiosity. The best GCs developed a tremendous understanding of the business by exhibiting a genuine curiosity to understand how the business ticked, what actually were the risks and the challenges, and where were the growth opportunities. One GC, for example, and these were the good old days when we actually could move around a lot more than the COVID times, would say, anytime I've got a business meeting in, say, a different country or jurisdiction, I figure out where is our business operations close to that, and I go spend at least an hour, if not half a day there. It could be a customer call center. It could be a factory. It could be a sales operation. Sometimes I go out in the field with our sales reps. Those kinds of firsthand experiences equip that general counsel to really understand the business from the ground up, inside out. And what he said to me is, I can never predict what I'm going to learn in those field trips that I take, but I guarantee they make me a better business person and make me a better lawyer, because I don't give the lawyer's answer. I'm more than just a lawyer. So that was one of the tips for the how-tos I learned along the way. The very best GCs are collaborating, integrating their legal expertise into the context of the business, and that is what makes them so valuable. Another vector of collaboration, another dimension that in-house lawyers engage in is between the legal team and other corporate functions. Now, I've called out procurement here specially. Why? Because sometimes this is the vector collaborating with the procurement department where there's a little bit more friction. It doesn't always feel like a collaborative relationship. Sometimes this feels like a win-lose negotiation. that there is real value in thinking about how you integrate your perspective into whether it's HR, compliance, tax, finance, bringing that perspective to bear and figuring out what's your shared goal and how are you going to collaborate effectively amongst yourselves in order to advance those goals. Critically important. And we know that COVID has brought to the fore an incredible number of those kinds of opportunities. Chances are, if you're a GC, you've been sitting on the crisis management committee for the last 6 months or so, the ability to establish those relationships and continue them well into the future is seriously what's going to allow you to emerge from this crisis, whenever we emerge, in a much stronger position. You're creating right now a reservoir of trust amongst your colleagues, and you will continue to dip into that. Sometimes it feels like the well is almost dry. You've gotten to the bottom of where the trust is right now, and the question is, how do you turn the taps back on and refill the reservoir? That's going to be important to keep those relationships thriving, even when you can't get together in person. And there's a real trick to being able to do that in the virtual world. Now, what's the last vector of collaboration for in-house lawyers? Well, I cheated a little bit. Maybe not cheated. Let me say simplified the world a little bit so that we can collect all of the outside actors into a single vector. And here's what we mean. It could be the in-house legal department collaborating with your external advisors, like your law firms. Maybe you're part of a peer network. If you're not, I hope you figure out quickly how to establish a peer network, because they're tremendous fountains of not only knowledge, but support. There's trade associations, regulators, legal service providers. All of these vectors outside the entity are going to be important for innovation, because we know that innovation happens at the intersection of different kinds of ideas. So how you bring innovation to bear, it depends wholly on how much you're able to access both outside and inside experts who bring a novel point of view and help you put that into practice. So there's a whole variety of ways, directions that you can collaborate. And in just a minute, we're going to talk about why and how. But I understand there's some questions here. So should we take a moment, Valts, to bring in some questions at this point?
Yes, Heidi, indeed. We do have a couple of questions coming in. So you pointed out why collaboration is useful, what are the benefits, but now the question is, what are the main obstacles that you have identified that prevent people from successfully collaborating?
Oh, great question. And of course, we took a research lens on this. And the way we went about exploring this for in-house lawyers is we ran a survey for several hundred general counsel and chief lawyers, chief legal officers, and so forth. And we said, in your own words, tell us the answer to that exactly. And we wanted to hear it from people in their own words, so that we gave people the opportunity to describe what those challenges were and not just label them. And our team is trained up in qualitative research methods. So, what we found out to be the single biggest barrier across countries, across size of organization, no matter how big or small the legal department was or what industry they're in, time pressure. So there's just the crush of the urgent business that's happening right now. I suspect that hasn't gotten any easier. It's probably gotten significantly harder in the COVID era. So I think that what we need to think about here, if you are a GC, if you're an in-house lawyer, what is it that you are doing to economize on time? Are you ruthlessly setting priorities? Are you using technology to cope with the prioritization? Are you sure that everyone is crystal clear on what the strategic objectives are and how they should be spending their time? We don't have a moment to lose or a moment to waste. And as leaders, making sure people understand how to prioritize their time and energy is going to be part of what gets us into the efficiency. Let me point out two other barriers that emerge for collaboration, even within the in-house legal team. Trust. There's two kinds of trust that we should understand. One is competence trust. Now, this turns out not to be a huge barrier amongst the lawyers, because they're pretty well able to size each other up in terms of their technical legal chops right from the beginning. But what creates a barrier to collaboration is sometimes the trust that the business places in the lawyers to be more than just a lawyer. It's to be more than the department of no, to be a blocker. And sometimes we see that the trust in the lawyer's ability to take a commercial angle is sometimes a blocker for collaboration to happen. So that's one issue. The other kind of trust is interpersonal trust. And we see this raising its ugly head sometimes within the legal department. There's a bit of a politics or turf protection. And if people aren't clear on their roles and the value that other people are adding, it can put them into a bit of a defensive mindset. And sometimes that leaks into a lack of interpersonal trust. So those are the kinds of barriers that our research uncovered that are alive in a whole range of legal firms. And we should think about how to overcome those. We'll talk about that soon.
Very good. I believe we do have one more question from Laimonas directly. So Laimonas, go ahead.
Okay. I have a general question. Maybe Heidi, maybe you can address it in the end. For us, you are like a goddess of collaboration. And I really mean that. We quote you a lot, we talk about you a lot, and as I said, collaboration is one of our strategic directions, or vectors, if you like. Now I start feeling a bit indebted and owing to other sectors. You research and write a lot about professional services, about lawyers and others. I think you should expand to wider horizons, talk more about general collaboration in business. Maybe you can touch it in the end or somewhere, but we have many participants from CEOs and other managers who could listen to your advice.
That's really helpful to think through. And indeed, if you are joining as part of the executive team, my question to you is, how are you fostering that kind of collaboration across the various divisions and departments and inside and outside the corporation as well? And to be clear, our recent book has focused on in-house lawyers. But we have studied this phenomenon in healthcare organizations, in biotech and pharmaceutical companies, lots of kinds of financial institutions, insurance companies, and asset managers. And we know that these principles apply across essentially humanity. These kinds of barriers that we talked about in terms of time pressure, I think everyone is feeling the crush of the urgent right now and trying to figure out how to set the right kinds of objectives. Here's one piece of advice that I think is important for leaders right now. Even if your strategic aims haven't changed, perhaps especially if your strategic aims haven't changed in the recent times because of the crisis, you need to reinforce that. The world is changing so quickly around us that a lot of people are feeling insecure. They're not sure that they're placing their bets at work in the right areas. They're not sure that they're investing their time and energy in the kinds of projects that will come to fruition. And as leaders, we need to do everything we can to quell some of that uncertainty and anxiety, because that's not when people are operating at their best. And well, let me say it this way. If you are not entirely sick and tired of hearing yourself state the strategic aims, it means you haven't done it nearly enough. You have got to reinforce and help people make sure that they understand that staying the course is the right way to go. Or indeed, when you have to pivot, when you have to flex and adapt to the environment, making sure people understand which direction they're heading, what specifically you're asking of them, and why that direction has changed. Those are the kinds of actions that leaders can take that will allow the collaboration to flow much more efficiently and effectively. So absolutely, this is not just the case for the in-house lawyers. This is the case across the business entity. Now, you mentioned, Laimonas, that we know some of these outcomes of collaboration. I'm not going to get into all of these right now. Let me just touch on maybe a couple of them and assure you that these are grounded in data and science, right? So this is not Heidi's opinion of why collaboration matters. We've collected millions of data records across all of these different kinds of entities. And, with the help of mathematicians and statisticians, we've crunched the data, we run the models, and we understand how to control for other kinds of variables that will help us isolate the effects of collaboration. And we can now say without a shadow of a doubt that when people and organizations engage in the kind of smart collaboration that we've been talking about, there are commercial and business benefits associated with that, and there are real human benefits associated with it. These days, let's focus on innovation, because innovation is so critically important as the world is changing really quickly around us. You know, we have seen entities have to pivot on a dime, as we say. I was working with a law firm that was supporting an automotive client. In a 3-week period, that automotive client shifted production from auto parts to ventilators. Think about what's involved there, the nature of the collaboration that had to happen. It's not just that the lines needed to change. It's not just that they needed to bring in all kinds of new experts. They needed to figure out, in this country, in the US, how to get FDA approval, regulatory approval for a medical device, not something they ever had experience in before. That kind of innovation allows us to understand that innovation isn't just blue sky thinking. A lot of people confuse the terms innovation and creativity. They're not the same. Creativity is just one facet of innovation. You need people who are those blue sky thinkers who connect the dots at the very highest levels, and they're able to think creatively. And you need people to bring it right back down to earth and say, how do we put that crazy idea into practice? That's what had to happen when an automaker starts making ventilators. It's what happens inside your organization when you need to find a new direction. And my challenge to you is, how do you think about an innovation project as a collaboration between people who think in very different ways, people who are those blue sky thinkers, and people who are incredibly concrete and practical? Do you think about bringing different types of individuals, different types of thinkers onto an innovation project and creating the space for them to bring their strengths to bear? That's what it takes for innovation. You know, whether we look at the number of patents that are filed in an R&D department, or we look at the success of a Broadway show, what we know is that innovation happens when the team has a variety of thinkers and you're bringing a novel combination of existing knowledge together in new ways. Right? So think about innovation is very clearly the integration of different kinds of thinking and different kinds of expertise for a new outcome. And then let me touch on one other outcome of collaboration, which is perhaps not as familiar. You know, I mean, we can certainly demonstrate financial outcomes like higher revenues and profits and productivity. But have you ever thought about collaboration as a way to get new joiners in your organization to thrive? So our research, and supported by loads of other academics and practitioners, shows that even more than a match between the skill set and the job description, the biggest predictor of whether somebody who joins a new organization will be successful in their new role is the speed and depth with which they get integrated into the new organization. Our research initially showed that a new joiner has about a year to 18 months in order to get integrated in their organization. And after that, it's really difficult for them to thrive in that new company. Actually, these days, the timeline is considerably compressed. So my challenge to you, whatever role you're in, if you're thinking about making a new strategic hire, somebody who's experienced, maybe you've managed to bring them in from a competitor or from a provider or a different agency, how are you going to get them collaborating quickly and extensively with the current organization? You want to make sure that they are plugged in, not just in the kind of onboarding sense, in a superficial way, do they know their passwords, but how do you draw on their expertise so that they establish their reputation and let people know where they're going to be able to add the most value? That's far too important to leave to chance. And yet we find a lot of organizations, even big successful ones with sophisticated HR departments, aren't doing the ongoing integration work that needs to happen when new joiners come for the first 6 and 12 months. That's going to save you a tremendous amount, not only of hiring costs, but you're going to recoup your investment much sooner. So lots of empirical outcomes of collaboration. And by all means, if you're interested in exploring more of these, I'm always happy to engage in this conversation. We've got a few minutes left, and I just thought we could touch on some of the how-tos. Now, we have put everything, the kitchen sink, as we say, all on this slide so that we can move fluidly between them. I think it might be worth right now diving into the second column. You see all 4 columns here are the 4 vectors of collaboration. The second one is the collaboration between, say, legal and the business. The advice here is to insert oneself earlier in strategic conversations. And whether you're a lawyer or whether you're a business executive, making sure that your input is available early enough in a decision-making or a creative process is what allows people to understand how and when you're going to add value. Figuring out where are those sparks of conversation happening and establishing yourself as a go-to partner. Your objective, regardless of the role you're in, is to move from being simply responsive to questions or responsive to requests to becoming a thought partner, really engaging in back and forth, and ultimately to becoming a thought leader. We know that people who are able to help shape the future of their organizations are the ones who are very proactively demonstrating this curiosity. They're asking even naive questions. They are stepping outside their comfort zone, and they're admitting when they've bumped up against the boundary of their own expertise so that they're able to bring people with complementary skill sets and experiences on board. That's the essence of what it takes to engage in this kind of smart collaboration. Our watch out at the bottom here is to make sure you're overcoming what we call threat rigidity. That's a psychological phenomenon. It's been studied for decades in the psychology literature and also in political science. There have been a whole variety of political fiascos that they can trace back to the idea of threat rigidity. It means that when people are under stress, when they're anxious, when they're under extreme pressure, they are less flexible and malleable in the way they think about both the problems and the solution sets. This is why it's so important to collaborate and have people you can trust and lean on who are going to ask you the challenging questions, who are going to raise their hand and admit when there's some room for query on the team. Can you pressure test the ideas before you go out to market with them? Understanding when it is that you are grasping at certainty rather than exploring the phenomenon is going to be critical to get us through this crisis. Threat rigidity is a situation when, because of the stress and the pressure that we're under, we grasp at the first available option as opposed to exploring the optimal ones. And if you, wherever you sit in your organization, can keep an eye out for this kind of rigidity that can kick in during a crisis, you can be the one to spark innovation and figure out when you have to be more adaptive to the situation and perhaps ask the question that will unlock the potential there. So I understand there may be some other questions. Maria, let me hand it back to you. If we've got any other questions, happy to take those as well.
Well, I have to admit the last slide has been so good that it already answers quite a few of the questions. But there is one topic we have not yet touched upon, and this is collaboration across borders. So the question goes, how to increase collaboration among people from different countries who do not meet daily or who meet only online?
Absolutely. And, there's actually 2 aspects to that question, and it's worth unpacking. One is the cross-cultural aspect. Let's come back to that in a minute. The second one is the virtual aspect. Because even if we're operating within our own country, within our own organizational culture, establishing relationships online can be tricky to do. And so we have written, some colleagues and I have written some articles in Harvard Business Review where we've explored this. And one of the slightly counterintuitive suggestions that we make is to figure out how to bring some of your personal realm into that meeting. And so it sounds counterintuitive because we've just talked earlier about how there's this crush of the business pressure and everyone wants to be task focused and get the work done quickly. How could it possibly be beneficial to take some time at the beginning of a meeting for personal chit chat? Isn't that just a waste of time? Well, that's the counterintuitive piece here. Trying to set aside the urgency and create some room for humanity and interpersonal connections actually allows the work to get done more efficiently. And one of the routines that was established. So one of my mentors was called Dr. Richard Hackman. He's passed away, but he was known as the godfather of groups and teams research. And in his research seminar, he used to start these fortnightly meetings with what he called good news. And everyone did a quick whip around who was in attendance and shared one piece of good news that had something, that positive that had happened either to them or they had observed or read about. And it was not just a filler. It was not just a warm-up exercise. Cognitively, we know that when people are willing to share some good news like that, it creates chemicals in the brain like the endorphins and the serotonin that actually put people in a more collaborative, sharing, trusting mindset. And it's something you might want to think about starting your sessions with a whip around of good news. It seems like a soft and fluffy kind of topic, but if you believe in neuroscience, you think that there's actually a rationale behind it. So that's part of thinking about the virtual piece. You layer on cross-cultural expectations. How do people establish collaboration across borders? I've been incredibly privileged. I've lived and worked on 4 continents. I speak Japanese, I speak German, I've lived in South Africa, I've lived in France, I spent 11, 12 years living in London. And I say all of that not because it makes me an expert in cross-cultural communication, but merely because it's highlighted to me how difficult that is. And here are 2 pointers to think about cross-cultural communications. Number 1 is empathy. Even when we don't truly understand what somebody else is going through, making the effort to ask the questions in a respectful way and try and hear from them what they're going through or why they've positioned their statement that way, or what they meant by an email that they sent rather than jumping to conclusions is critically important. Demonstrating empathy and at least trying to understand their point of view and where they're coming from is super important. The second one, and this is very, very tactical, but we want to make sure that people are recognizing the sacrifices that people make when you have to do things like cross time zones. And so, this again sounds very small and tactical, and yet it is symbolic of your respect for other people. If you have one of these all hands meetings that requires people to join from lots of different time zones, rotate the agenda so that the person in Australia isn't always getting up at 3 a.m. for joining the meeting, and try to make sure that you're using references and other cultural phenomenon. If you're talking about politics, for example, try not to be completely country centric in the examples that you use. If you're using sports metaphors, figure out whether cricket or baseball is going to make more sense to the audience you're talking to, and be inclusive in those kinds of ways. Small tactics like that are highly symbolic, and they actually go a long way towards that first point of demonstrating empathy. So a couple of points around cross-cultural collaboration there.
Well, Heidi, thank you very much. And with the last question, I would give the floor to Aku, who also happens to have a question. Aku, the floor is all yours.
Aku, if you could take yourself off mute, that would be great.
Yes. So Heidi, you mentioned that lawyers by nature are not typically very good collaborators, but have you come across with a profession or industry or business where collaboration is a very natural way to work, from where lawyers could learn from?
Well, Aku, truly, you're putting words in my mouth. I would not like to go on record as having said that lawyers are by nature terrible collaborators. I would never say something like that. But what we know is that people who are by nature either skeptical by nature or have been trained to be highly skeptical, for example, the kind of training we give people in law schools, it does make them on the wary side. So what kinds of environments do we see where collaboration flourishes? I'll come back to psychological safety. Collaboration flourishes where people are able to be vulnerable. They're able to admit where they're not able to solve a problem on their own. So I don't think there's one particular industry where this happens more than others. I'd say, drawing on some of our prior speakers as well, this is really a question of how does the leader create a sort of environment where people are able to put their ego aside and ask for help from other people, which is a foundation for knowing when collaboration is going to add value, and when they're able to demonstrate the sort of empathetic, compassionate teamwork and leadership so that people believe that their contributions will be valued and it's worth making the effort. I think those are the kinds of areas where leaders in any sort of industry or sector are going to be able to foster collaboration and spur the sort of trust, interpersonal and confidence trust, which leads to collaboration in a very productive way.
Heidi, thank you so much. You have been simply amazing, and I'm sure we have many viewers who are running to the bookstores to pick up your book and learn some more.
Thanks very much for having me.
And now the time is already approaching thus far that we are about to hear from our last speaker. As you know, law firms strive to be trusted advisors to their clients. But a law firm also needs a trusted advisor to maintain growth and innovation. So our final speaker, Rob Millard, is one of the top consultants for professional services and law firms in Europe. He has co-authored 10 books on law firm strategy and management, and his webpage includes must-read blog posts, not only for lawyers, but for every business leader. So do check it out. Rob, take it away.
And despite promising that I wouldn't do that, I forgot to unmute. Thank you so much for this opportunity to participate in this celebration. Aku and I were privileged some years back to be the co-chairs of the IBA's Law Firm Management Committee together, and so I've known him for some time. And I think it's fair to say I regard Aku as not just as a colleague, but as a good friend too. And so it's truly wonderful to see the firm that bears his name reach this milestone. And congratulations to you, Aku, on assembling the kind of team that you have that has built a firm of this stature. I'm sure that we'll be using different technology, but in 25 years' time, we'll be gathered again at this time to celebrate your 50th anniversary. What I know about you is that excellence is something that covers every aspect of your life. It's important to you in your personal life, in your professional life, everything. So it's not surprising that you asked me to speak about centers of excellence, or indeed that you have centers of excellence in your firm. So what I'd like to do today is just talk a little bit about centers of excellence. They've become quite I hesitate to use the word fad of the month, but they certainly have become quite popular. And before I go through what we're going to cover, let's just look at that slide, at that graphic at the bottom. Often when I hear terms being used and they appear to be new terms, I go and use Google Trends to see how people are talking about them and how long people have been talking about that or searching for that particular term. And this is a search for centers of excellence going back to 2004 to today. And as you can see, about 15 years ago, it was quite something. It was being searched for a lot and therefore spoken about a lot. And then it went into a sort of a gentle decline. But just look what happened about a year ago. Suddenly, everybody is talking about centers of excellence again. So this is a very good time to talk about why we should have them, what they are, how different kinds of organizations have approached them. I'm not only going to talk about law firms this afternoon, what they mean at Sorainen, and how they can be used to build sustainable competitive advantage. So we can start, if you don't mind, with what are we talking about? And there's so many definitions that I had to pick and choose. So I chose two. One is from McKinsey, which is to hold expertise centrally for the use of all the businesses, that they form links and encourage collaboration, emphasis, across business units in areas where the company must be distinctive, such as product and innovation, operational efficiency, and brand management. The second one is from an American company, and this one is focused specifically on legal services. Teams of experts that provide leadership, research, insight, and best practices for a business focus area, delivering enhanced service at lower costs than traditional business models. And it's scalable and nimble approach to changing markets and business conditions. So if we look at the common themes there and across some of the other definitions as well, centrally coordinated, not necessarily controlled, but coordinated. This emphasis on collaboration, the ability to enhance agility, and a focus on where the firm needs to be distinctive. It's often said that clients see law firms as all the same. I don't believe that's necessarily true, but I do know that it is important for law firms to find ways to be able to be truly distinctive in the market, to stand out. And that needs to be in being better than the competitors in particular areas. These days, it also needs to be something that operates virtually, because we're talking about an organizational dimension to the firm. We're talking about something real, not just something you talk about within the firm, but an actual dimension to the firm. And then the sustainable competitive advantage, which is a term we all use, but what does that really mean? Well, there's a fellow by the name of Jay Barney who unpacked this decades ago, and what he said is a source of sustainable competitive advantage has got 4 characteristics. The first is it must be valuable. If your clients don't want to buy it, then it's not a source of competitive advantage. The second is that it must be rare. If everybody in the market's got it, then it's not a source of advantage. The third is that it can't be something where a competitor can say, hey, that's a great idea, we'll do the same thing. It mustn't be imitatable. And the fourth thing is that it mustn't be substitutable. So your competitor shouldn't be able to think, well, we can't do exactly that, but we can achieve the same thing by a different means. And if you can nail all those 4, then that is a sustainable source of competitive advantage. And I would submit that is exactly where centers of excellence need to be focused. So let's look at a couple of examples. I picked 2 there's so many, but I picked 2 from Deloitte. I picked 1 from NATO. The two from Deloitte first, the one with their legal services, the shared service center in Bratislava. They've created a center of excellence which is focused on finding new ways to automate legal services with technology. And this is for Deloitte across the board. The center of excellence is in Bratislava, but this is servicing Deloitte generally. The second one is based in Singapore, which was a center of excellence that they created with a 3-year lifespan, invested $20 million in it, which was to examine the future of work and how jobs were going to change and how job requirements would change and how skills were going to change and from that, how they needed to train their people. NATO's is a really interesting one because, of course, they're an alliance of organizations. They are a substantial organization in themselves. But what they've done is they've gone to this peer network that Heidi was talking about. So they're member organizations. Where can they leverage off centers of excellence within each of the member organizations and the member militaries and the partner countries in order to train their people and educate the leaders in ways that it wouldn't be effective to do themselves. R3, I'm going to describe in a little bit more detail in the next slide, but just as a foretaste, it's a joint venture of about 200 financial services firms, regulators, and professional service firms that have developed a blockchain-based enterprise management system, Corda, they call it, the Corda Enterprise Platform. And the last one is an in-house department of a very large UK firm. The GC said that I could describe it, but I was pleased not to disclose who they are, so I won't. But basically what they were faced with was all their lawyers were arranged with the divisions of this organization, and what they'd created is some center of excellences around IP, litigation, ethics and compliance, and M&A to begin with, and then they added some more later. And they pulled the best lawyers in each of those areas out of the divisions and put them into the centers of excellence and left only the more generalist lawyers with the divisions, which caused quite a lot of angst, I have to say. It wasn't a very popular move. The lawyers didn't want to move out of their divisions until it was proven to be something that actually worked, and then it worked rather well. R3, I think, is interesting because it's a mix of a client and law firms. So this consortium got together and they developed this quarter enterprise platform, and then they thought, we wonder how much our lawyers that advise us even understand what it is that we're doing. So they invited 10 law firms to begin with, there are a few more now, to form the Center of Excellence, and they provided the lawyers within these firms that participated in the Center of Excellence with updates and product demos, latest best practices on blockchain technology, just keeping them up to speed with the latest thinking, access to confidential research, so that they were able to advise them properly on this brand new, innovative, completely market-shifting platform that they were developing. So this is looking at Sorainen particularly. Some of the problems that you're addressing with these centers of excellence. One of them is that you have expertise dispersed across your firm, which is a problem, especially in small markets, where the offices typically are a bit small. And how do you get it so that when somebody gets an inquiry that relates to one of the areas that you that's not mainstream, it's a niche area, that person immediately thinks, who else in one of the other offices could work with me on this matter to put a team together to service the client's needs in a more sophisticated way than we could just with the resources in our own office. Linked to that is hyper-competitiveness in key high-value areas. So how can you literally outcompete the competitors? There's a challenge. Heidi's just been talking. I'm a great fan of Heidi Gardner as well, just like you. And so I'm glad to build on what she was talking about in collaborating in order to develop and share knowledge across geographies. Sources of competitive advantage, we've kind of mentioned it a little bit. And developing excellence-based client relationships and this VUCA world. These are the problems that you are seeking to address. And my understanding is that you have quite a lot of these centers of excellence already. You've got one focused on taxes and customs and transfer pricing in Latvia. You've got corporate bonds and gaming in Estonia. You've got sovereign bonds in Lithuania. I'm not going to read them all, but you have quite a sophisticated network of centers of excellence already, and kudos to you on that. But digging in a little bit more about why. Why is this quality and this excellence so important? Well, like Heidi, I also like digging into the theory to form a foundation for the practice. And I just want to reference this study, which is one of the most comprehensive studies in history about looking that looks at the link between strategy and performance. And it's been running now for 60 years. This is a program, the permanent program, Profit Impact of Market Strategy, was initiated by senior managers at General Electric in the 1960s. It made a circle through Harvard. It's been run by a team out of London now in 2020. And the intent was to use empirical data, hard evidence, facts and figures, to determine which strategies are successful at a business unit level. So this is not looking across organizations. This is looking specifically at business units, practice areas, you might say, offices, you might say, industry sector groups, you might say, however you organize your firm or your organization. But by 2020, this database had just over 12,500 observations across 4,200 business units. And they identified six key correlators between strategy and performance. I'm not going to go through all six, but I do want to mention just two of them. And there's the first. In the long run, the most important single factor driving performance is the quality of services, the quality relative to those of the firm's rivals. And another one is that market share and profitability are strongly related. But I just want to hammer this quality because there's such a close correlation between quality and excellence too. And quality, of course, means delivering the service to spec, what the client wants, within budget and on time. A Lamborghini isn't more quality, better quality than a Volkswagen unless what the client wants is a flashy sports car. If the client wants a runabout to get around town, then a Lamborghini is actually poor quality compared to the cheaper car. So quality is absolutely crucial, and that is essentially, by definition, what centers of excellence are meant to be driving. So how does one go about building one of these centers of excellence? Well, this is the first level, just going across the different offices and identifying the people in each office that have got the relevant experience and making a note of that and telling everybody that they exist. And to be honest, this is probably where most law firms actually stop. And let's focus now on law firms for the moment, because the rest of these levels are related specifically to law firms. I suppose one could take them and modify them to other kinds of organizations. But that would be the first, to identify the people and to form a group, form a community, if you like. The next step is to link those people into a group and actively encourage collaboration. So this is more than just, this is the group, this is actually driving activities. The leader's driving activities. And that leader may be the firm leadership. More likely, it's a senior lawyer who's an expert in one of those areas. And I do know, again, from what I know about your firm, each of the centers of excellence indeed is being driven by an individual or a small group of individuals. So this is all up to them. And it may be that that's where it stops too. And that's great, because now you've got you can put a better team together than before, and clients are better serviced, and all that is good. But it's not unlocking the full potential of a center of excellence yet. That takes the next step, which is to actually take that center of excellence and build it into a structure and give it some of its own strategic objectives. It's very much about knowledge management, isn't it? It's about developing new knowledge and sharing that knowledge amongst the team so that everybody becomes better. It may be about allocating some business resource development resources so that it has its own marketing plan and its own business development plan and its own key clients and its own strategy for servicing those clients. Certainly, it's going to be about having its own innovation tools, which doesn't mean tools that nobody else uses. It just means resources to do with innovation and processes that get devoted to this center of excellence. And then some thought needs to be given to how input into the center of excellence aligns with the other systems. And one of the most obvious ones is in performance evaluation and performance measurement and reward. Because if lawyers aren't going to be rewarded for their participation in this, but instead they're going to be rewarded for production, then they're probably not going to devote as much time as they should to the centers of excellence in order to get the best value out of that. So then, and that's not the only system where misalignment can cause a loss of efficiency, but it's certainly the most obvious one. So that's 3 levels, and there's one more. And that speaks to developing new knowledge. I try whenever I can to talk to general counsel about what their life is like and how their life is changing. And I ran a workshop last year at Gray's Inn, which on how client legal needs were changing. It's a little ironic because Gray's Inn was started nearly a millennium ago, and here we were talking about the future of legal services, and Aku participated in that workshop. But that what triggered that workshop was something that General Counsel was saying to me, which was that they thought that the lawyers, the relationship partners that were servicing them, and this came from several GCs, not just one, the relationship partners that were servicing them believed with all sincerity that they understood what they needed, but they didn't. Or what they needed was different to what the GC understood they needed. And so how do you bridge that gap? You have to bridge that gap collaboratively with clients. You have to co-discover the, and this workshop was mostly about emerging legal services. So we went through a process of trying to understand what the legal services, how they were changing. So what the drivers were on a particular organization, and how that might lead to changes in the business, and how that might lead to changes in legal services and legal needs, and how the services would change, and how an organization, a law firm, a legal service provider would have to adapt itself in order to meet those new needs. And it was a fascinating experience going through that. So this is what something that the Centers of Excellence may choose to do as well at the very highest level, is to collaborate with clients, get input from clients and from other external sources. The intent being to develop this clear market leadership in quality. The intent also being a blue ocean strategy, which I'm going to unpack a little bit on the next slide. But what we mean by that is doing things that you are the only firm that can do it. So it is meeting needs that your clients cannot meet. Back to Jay Barney's definition of sustainable competitive advantage. And supporting clients with unmet and latent needs. This is hierarchy of client needs, isn't there? At the bottom, you've got routine needs, which every law firm in town can meet, and more those are going to alternative legal service providers, and clients select on price. And that's basically all. At the next level, there are distinctive needs, which is where the client makes a decision. Well, I'm going to use Sorainen for this kind of work, but I'm not going to use this other equally good but differently focused firm. And so there's a pre-qualification, but beyond that, it really gets down to cost as well as one of the key components. There are two more needs above that. The one is unmet needs, which are needs that the client knows about, but they don't believe there's anybody that can help them with them. So they either do them in-house or they accept them as business risk. And at the highest level, the latent needs, that is where the client isn't even aware of these needs yet. Which means, by definition, probably you're not aware of them either, and this just happens to be a new piece of legislation that's been promulgated. So there the trick is to go and co-discover those needs and to co-create the solution to those needs. This is my last slide, just talking about blue ocean strategy and what I mean by that. I'm sure this little Venn diagram is perfectly intuitive. You've got client needs, your rival services, your own firm's capabilities, and they all exist in the same context. You've got technology, geoeconomic, I beg your pardon, and socio-political drivers. You've got the same kind of regulation. It's the same for everybody. And right in the center there is this hyper-competitive zone where most firms exist through their entire existence. They never move out of that. It's the same, selling the same services to your clients as your rivals do, and it is hyper-competitive, and it's getting more hyper-competitive in today's world. But there are three other possibilities as well. Two of them are no good to you. And the top are the services that you can't provide, your rivals do, and your clients need them. And the other one are services that both your rivals and you can deliver, but your clients don't need them. It's that one over there. Services that your clients need that only you can supply, where if you can get your centers of excellence focused on that, that becomes, well, I could say a license to print money, but let's just say it creates scope for client relationships of a level that you cannot achieve otherwise. And of course, it won't be long before clients your rivals look across and say, but we could do the same thing. And so you constantly need to evolve that. And the first way to do that is to grow that blue circle upwards. By that, I mean finding new capabilities to service your clients' unmet needs. The other way is to grow it downwards, arrow B, which is co-discovering with your clients these new emerging or latent needs, as I described on the previous slide. And then there's a third, more obtuse way, which is really to change the rules of the game, to find ways to change your context. So that's really just a trot, if you like, through centers of excellence and why we have them and what they are and what they can deliver for a firm. I'd be happy to take any questions that you have.
Thank you, Rob. We're slightly behind the schedule, but sure, we will take a few questions I see that Aku Sorainen has a question. Aku, please.
For the presentation and making the effort of understanding how our firm works and being able to really tailor your advice and presentation on where we are today and should be going to. It was interesting in the very beginning where you showed that this idea of Center of Excellences is actually quite old, but during the years it has been discussed less and less, so less Google hits for the word. Until last 2 years, there was a rapid increase again on it. Do you have any idea that why this has become much more popular idea during the past 2 years?
The uptick is really sudden, Aku. It was in December, November, December last year. So I can only imagine it's got something to do with COVID. I can't think of anything else that's happened so dramatically, so recently.
Okay. Thank you. There's another question that we can still take. It's quite related to what Aku just asked, that centers of excellence are mostly not seen as priority, but only secondary. How to motivate people to invest into centers of excellence as the new future of the law firms and its services? What would you say?
That's a complex answer. It's a simple question with a complex answer. I guess leadership is part of it. You have to have a couple of senior lawyers who are thinking to themselves, this is the level that we're at, but if we want to be able to service our clients in this particular niche area at a higher level, then this is the only way we can do that. That may be one. Another is simply thinking about the strategy of the firm and how do you deliver superior quality? How do you achieve excellence? And if you've got people across the different offices that have got who are not connected on a daily basis, how do you make it so that they can connect about that in order to develop new knowledge and share the knowledge they have? And the third would be to engage with clients about it, because if clients say, yes, this is a great idea, we think you should do it, well, then you've got a lot more leverage with your lawyers. If they say, no, I don't really care, well, then you don't. But the fourth and possibly the most important is if you make the decision that this is important, and if you make the decision that this is something that you want to drive, then you need to make sure that you clear the obstacles out of the way. Because usually lawyers don't participate in an exercise like this, not because they don't want to, they genuinely do, but because they are flat out busy and because their performance isn't measured in this way.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you very much. It was really a pleasure having you over. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your questions, and thank you all who tuned in. We hope you had an exciting 2 hours, and thank you for your patience. We're a bit behind the schedule. The recording of the seminar will be shared by email, and it will be also available on the Sorainen website. You can continue using the networking function that we tell you at the beginning on WorksUp for meetings and chats with people of similar interests.
And finally, we would also point out that the next event will take place on 29th of September, and it will focus on clients and innovation. Those who have not yet registered, you are welcome to do that. But now we end this session. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again in about 2 weeks.